So this is just another visual to give you. We wanted to give you a couple of different visuals of what it looks like to move tasks into teams. So when Carlos was talking before about a village, you can imagine this as like a village. And in every village, you have teams that are holding down the core activities. And then inside of those core activities, people are holding some core roles. Like here, what have the four core roles inside of every team been?
Facilitator, coordinator, messenger, logistics.
Great. You can create other roles as things emerge. Like, for instance, within one of the teams, it was like, we need a self-care table, and so people swarm to the need around that. You can create sub-teams and new roles around emergent needs. This is just kind of a template for you to build off of. Does anybody have questions about this before we move on? Okay, yay, clear.
And so we wanted to share this with you. It's called APEST. It's something that's been developed in the missional movement by the Alan Hirsch is sort of the core thinker who sort of developed this, and it really comes out of, and the missional movement is a movement of progressive evangelicals trying to build up a religious left and reclaim the church from the Creflo Dollars and the other TV pastor types. Maybe y'all don't know who Creflo Dollar is. I don't know, but and so. In APEST, actually, you want to tell the story about I forget what the Ephesians 4 thing.
Oh, yeah. So in the missional movement, they talk about how in Ephesians 4, in part of the Bible, it's already part of, in a sense, the theogenetic code of Christianity, meaning it's written into the Bible itself, the 5 main activities that have to be happening at all times for the church to serve its proper function. And so part of what Alan Hirsch is saying is that that 5-fold ministry, those 5 core activities, have been winnowed to 2 over the past hundreds of years. And that's a lot of the reason that there's been cancer or mutation in the expression of that code. And so what they're trying to do is to reclaim that code so that the church can serve its true proper function. And to do that, they want to build those 5 core activities into into the structure of their movement. So the 5 core activities are... Yes. So I'll just say that the 5-fold ministry for them has to do with these 5 core activities that if they're not happening all the time, the church can't serve its proper function. So much in the way that you all were talking about operations, fundraising, fun things like soccer matches, campaigns, action, strategy, leadership development. We all know that if some of those things didn't happen, you absolutely could not fulfill your function. So this is what that looks like for the missional movement that's trying to reclaim the function of Christianity, or trying to serve the true purpose of the church. So we're just going to go through each of them. I'm actually going to talk about the activities before we talk about the roles, because before we get into any kind of personality test thinking around this, it's really important to focus on the verbs, on the activities, or the how, as you all were saying over here. So how are they going to serve their function? They're going to serve their function by starting and seeding new projects, chapters, and relationships in new places. They call that the apostle. They do it by communicating the importance and truth of the movement. They do it by, and that's called the prophet. They do it by recruiting people and expanding the network. That's called the evangelist. And they do it by nurturing and protecting people in the movement to build a true culture of care. And they call those people shepherds. And the last activity is understanding and explaining the movement to others. And they call that the role of the teacher. How many of you see some of these things happening in your organizations? How many of you see some of these things missing in your organizations? You may decide that you don't actually need all of them, of course. We just think it's an interesting model because if some of these things are missing, but we think they're actually important, that's really good to notice. A lot of us come from organizations where we pay lip service to, like, there's all kinds of leadership here, everybody's a winner, but then it's like what's actually built into the structure is that certain people make decisions, certain people don't. Certain people make money, certain people don't. So when you don't actually have these activities built into the structure, there's a way that you're not actually validating 5 different types of leadership that are truly necessary for your success. So
yeah, when I saw this, it really just it brought this one meeting back to my mind where it was after an action. We had a bunch of our leaders in a room, and this young woman who she's really dope. We've been working with her for a while. She got up and she said, "I don't want to be an organizer. And I was like, you're already an organizer. What are you talking about? But what she was saying, because really what we were doing, we were asking everybody in our organization to be essentially an evangelist. We were saying, your role is to go out and bring more people in. We want you to go do one-to-ones. We want you to canvas. We want you to do this. Your role in the organization is to go and find more people and build the chapter, or build the thing, right? And what she was saying is, I don't want to do one-to-ones. I don't want to do that. She actually went back to school later that year to become a filmmaker, because she wants to be. I really think she's a prophet if we were to do this. Like, she has a vision, and she wants to be communicating that vision in more and increasingly creative ways. And you know what? And when she said that, you know what I told her? I said, oh yeah, go do that. We need that. Please go do it. And she had no support. There was no infrastructure to really help her do that. And when she didn't do it, you know, what did we do? I think we didn't, it was not we held it against her, but it essentially was like, well, you could have done it, you know. It was on you. You know, people are apathetic or something like that, you know, like people say they want these things, but they don't actually want to do it, you know. But how do we actually build a structure that recognizes these different things and creates space and distributes support, right? We talked about how do we distribute support. If she wanted to go and do one-to-ones, there would have been support for her. If she wanted to go and, you know, do lobbying, there would have been support for her. But wanting to make videos, there wasn't any support, and she was left to her own devices. And so I thought about that when I saw the APEST, and I was like, man, I kind of missed out. And we also want to show you, on the next slide, please, how Cosecha has taken APEST and translated it for their movement. First, they just kind of changed the words from the evangelical, you know, that kind of triggers some people, you know, who don't have the church has, you know, been an interesting experience for some of us. My mom was a pastor. You would have loved her church, I'm telling you. But not every church was my mom's church. And so they've taken apostles and they're calling them seeders, guardians of the network, guardians of the DNA. And they've taken the seeders, and cedar, you know, cosecha means harvest, they're organizing farm workers. This language is all the seeders, growers, you know, it's sort of in line with their culture. Remember, we think about who is the culture for, who's going to be in there, what's going to resonate with them. But within the seeders, they've broken into different teams too, like the networking team or the village planting team, the infrastructure team. So within this larger core activity, there are teams that have been made out of that. And prophetic, because that's still kind of dope. Growers, community care rather than shepherds. And that's another thing that we didn't have in our organization. We still don't. We have a lot of people in my organization that see themselves as healers, as community care type people. And we value it, but we don't support it. You know, we don't have an infrastructure there to really support it. And so they built that in. So there's song and dance teams, or medical teams, the training, and how do we teach folks. And so this is also in your folders as well. This paper. Can someone hold it up who has it at the front so everyone can see it?
There it is.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, and those of you in the back. Thanks, y'all. You can take a look at that.
Fatima, do you want to add anything to that? Oh, yeah, sorry. Is Fati here?
Yeah. Don't worry, I can project.
There are a couple things I would add. So a big reason why we're doing APEST is because of the health of the swarm, right? We like I mentioned before, there are things that happen in our bodies that we start intuiting when something's off, that like seeing it gives you the tool to like name actually what's going on, and it's not bad, it's good, right? So for example, if you are growing somewhere new, you don't have cedars, it's good to name, like, oh, I'm wondering, like, why the hell are we only in Florida and California? What the hell is going on? It's like, shit, we're missing cedars. Let's go look for cedars. Same with growers. Like, if you were having a hard time finding new people, those are the growers. Fundraising, that ain't me. I'm not good at that. We need more people who are creative and like love that. Love coming up with those ideas. If there's a lot of confusion about roles, about the structure, what's the strategy, anything like that, training, right? You need some trainers. If people are feeling like tired or burnt out or Then community care is an obvious place. Or not all needs are being met, right? Like childcare, there are people who like, it comes to them to think about those things. That's that. And then with profits, if you're not as inspired all the time, it's because you're missing some prophets who can like vision. There's an opportunity around every corner. Here's the truth of where we are right now. So that's one piece. There's like, it's a way to notice when something's missing, to be able to understand better what's happening. But the other piece, this is the caveat that I'll share, is it's a lot for when you're starting. So the 4 roles and understanding that in itself is big. And so what we've been finding is APEST is not smart to share that way at the beginning. This is actually a tool that's very good when there's momentum and when you're trying to grow to scale. Because what you'll find in the beginning is you need, in the beginning, more seeding and more training. And then you'll need growers and all the other roles and community care you'll need at the beginning. But remember how we were talking, they were saying before, like there's the fluidity between decentralized and centralized. I would say there's a fluidity about the roles as well. Depending on the moment, depending on what needs to happen. And it's a lot for the beginning.
Great. Let's take 2 questions and 2 breakthroughs.
Yeah, so I guess I'm not quite sure about how this looks in terms of spreading, especially because it's useful to, like you just said, like, you know, this is for once the swarm gets going. But I'm thinking about like how this relates to the conversation about circles before. So is it that those 5 roles, and I know it's not like a rigid, you have to do it this way, but is that these 5 roles would all be in one circle, like a circle would have like different roles fulfilled, or that each role could be fulfilled by a circle and the circles could theoretically come together as a community or as a village?
I would say that it's better to think of these things as buckets than roles. So it's a bucket for core activities that you're doing. And it's a way of saying, here's a big thing. Inside that, there's these smaller tasks that need to be happening. And then even within that, within your networking team, you'll still have mini roles, like who's doing social media, like who's doing Twitter, who's doing Snapchat, who's doing, you know what I mean? So it's a way to just understand the scaffolding, I think, more than the roles. I did think somebody might ask that, so I created an extra slide that I'm just going to show you. Actually, I think I'm going to show you at the end after you do your breakout. Sorry.
Same question.
Okay. Yeah, Fatih.
Just in terms of like visualizing it best, right now what we've learned is it's easiest to visualize in a village, so that size, 150 people, maybe in a community as well, that all 5 are necessary for it to be healthy.
I'll just show you the visual. Okay, Emily, you can go down. It's past the end point. This is a surprise to James, too. He didn't know about it. Okay, go up. Sorry. Yes, okay. This was just an example of how things can replicate. So let's say these are all villages: Boston, Chicago, NYC, Homestead, Florida, Patterson, New Jersey, Boston, whatever it is. What Fatima is saying is that you need to have your core activities reflected in each of these things. You can call those core activities whatever you want. You can call it seeding, profiting, da-da-da-da-da-da. You can call it, what If Not Now calls it, is digital, fundraising, actions and campaigns. We have different names. We didn't adapt APEST for our purposes. We haven't used those buckets, and maybe we will later. But this is just to show you what it can look like when villages are replicating. We can go back to where we were before. Let's take one more breakthrough, one more question, and then we're going to have time to break out with each other.
So what I was hearing was that the teams, you might have these APEST roles. Here on this model it says team roles. So like you'd have a whole team of seeders, you'd have a whole team of, but within each of those roles there's still a coordinator, facilitator, messenger, logistics within each of those. But you don't need to have a seeder, a prophet, a grower, a community care, and a trainer within each.
Exactly. They're not roles in that sense. It's just a way of schematizing the work that needs to be happening. Do you want to add anything, Carlos?
I just want to say, there are look, I am a complete nerd about this stuff. I read a lot of the books, most of the literature. Also, our organization is called INI. We come from indigenous tradition, so thinking of adopting a Catholic frame or a Christian frame is not very comfortable for us. So I just want to say that. But I have a belief that we have to figure out how to give the best information that is out there. And I had the pleasure of knowing Alan Hirsch, who wrote this book. But the breakthrough, I just want to say, about this, maybe some of you are not at the level of yet experimenting with this, and maybe you don't have to now. But what I would say is, this is so fucking important. I'm gonna say it one more time. Like, this is so fucking important. The book is called Permanent Revolution, okay? And I recommend that all of you read it. But as my mentor from Peru says, when you read, you have to read it twice. Okay? And I know how many of you are on decolonialism and all this stuff. I read things with 3 or 4 eyes, okay? With my Western mind, with my indigenous mind, with 5 things, okay? So read it with carefulness, right? Because we're not saying all they're saying is legit. But what the core essence, the core thing that we're pulling is that I can tell you why, I can diagnose with this, why your organization has a gap just with this framework. Because if you tell me, Carlos, we are stuck in growth, like we don't have more chapters across different areas, I can tell you by chance, I can do an analysis that in your organization you don't have the capacity or seeders that have that capacity. And let me tell you why. Because of individualism in America, we tend to all want to relate to the same people.
Yes!
Are you following me? And this is not about sameness. This is about difference. But in that difference is where the emergence happens. So who has been to a meeting when you go through the whole agenda and somebody just raises their hand and says like, when are we going to bring people in? Who has been there? Or who's heard that person that says like, well, I want to travel across the country, and go and share this with more groups? Who has heard those people? Who heard the people are like, oh no, I just want to figure out how can we be taken care of. That's all they care about. Are you following me on this? Now, we're not saying that we're filling people into those things. Actually, if you read the book, it's very complex because it's saying we all have the 5. The question is, which one are you more dominant? So they actually do, like, what are you? Are you APEST? Are you PACES? Like, they have this whole letter coding to identify. Very intense. So it's very complex. I just want to say this. But in that complexity is where the emergence has. Now, what color is your button? Who has other colors? You have blue. Why? Because of your community care. Does anybody have red? Anyone has red? People in the back? No? Does anybody have the red name tag? No? Does it social media? Who are the social media people?
Oh, you can get them those buttons.
Ah, we gotta give them this. We got some name tags for them. Oh, little filler in the system here. Why do we do that? Now let me tell you why why having this coded and understanding, you have many codings, but why having this is important. Because let's say that a movement needs something, how do you know what you need? Let's say that you need 100 trainers to go to New Hampshire for something. If all of our movements knew how to categorize that kind of capacity, we could just Are you following me on this? And honor the difference of the roles. Because in our organizations, we don't honor it. Which is what James is saying. We only prefer one type, and everybody goes screw yourself. And then we wonder why the community, there's no community care, because we are only pushing through prophecy. But I just want to say, as I think this is so important. For the people that are thinking about, this is it. That's my endorsement.
Emily, can we go to the next slide? So what we're about to do now is we're going to have a breakout in our home circles. We'll take a couple of questions if they're really important for the breakout beforehand. Otherwise, we'll wait till after because you guys will probably be able to answer a lot of questions among yourselves.
Yeah.
We want to build a cross-difference movement towards the end of fossil fuel industry in our city. We need to spend a ton of time in trainings learning how to build trust and relationships across those differences.
Were folks in the back able to hear what she said? Nope. All right, I will repeat so you can hear me. She said to build a movement in your city across differences, they're going to have to spend a lot of time, invest a lot of time and resources and training on building relationships and building trust. That's a key lesson. Are other folks feeling that? Yeah. I see another hand raise up. Yeah.
We were talking a lot about like digging into what some of the core activities would be, and then really sort of landing on the need for more discussion about the like unit of organization and getting unity on that, and like talking more about like what the core activities would be once we figure out the unit of organization and how that like scales and interacts with each other and all that sort of thing.
So great.
So great. Thank you. Yeah.
What were some of the teams that you all came up with?
Trainers.
Stewardship.
What does that mean for you, stewardship?
I think it's about, part of it's about being a steward of the DNA, and part of it's about being a steward of like the fire in the field. So like one thing that I think Sean brought up was lifting up work that's being done outside of the core team.
Awesome. Thank you. So about stewardship. What are some other teams that you came up with? Other things that came to you?
Responsive team or a rapid response team?
Rapid response team. What kind of, for what purpose?
I mean, I think that it can play multiple roles. It can play a turnout role, so it can be a mobilization team, but also that, like noticing in chapter-based structures where, like the focus is steady, that there's a loss of ability to respond rapidly, to show up for allies, to do solidarity work, or just to move the mobilization muscle if there's been a lot of focus in another area. So having that as a core thing and a core group of people who are thinking about both showing up and leading and taking action.
What happens right now if something needs a response immediately?
Either it doesn't, I think sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes it puts a strain on the group. I think often the full capacity of a chapter isn't fully utilized. I mean, it totally depends. It totally, like, I'm sitting here in Boston. JVP Boston, I think, has one of these, like, you know. But I think it totally depends chapter to chapter. But often resources are underutilized, or the capacity that is there maybe in some way to respond doesn't happen. Or it happens messy and strains people.
So what she's saying, just for everybody in the back in here, is that when they don't have a rapid response team, rapid response in terms of mobilization gets dropped. People who actually have that capacity, it's underutilized, or people who don't have that capacity get stretched. It stretches the existing capacity of the group. So that's a really interesting, it's interesting that having one team addresses 3 challenges, basically.
What else are some things that folks are wrestling with? Any questions or confusion that remains?
I just want to clarify the APEST. The idea of that is that that's everything that needs to happen in a movement. And everything could fall into one of those categories. That's a comprehensive list of the kinds of things that need to happen for a movement to grow and succeed.
Emily had a response.
An insight that we had about that, which Carlos might actually say something different, or Fati, is that we were like, oh, there's like no one thinking about strategy in APEC. And we were like, oh, because like the church doesn't really have a strategy other than growth. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think it's important to remember the context that this was developed in, and to think about how might we actually, what functions might not fall into one of those buckets, and to not try and force it, but actually think flexibly about what buckets what buckets might we actually need to create outside of these five?
Super, that's really helpful.
I disagree with that, by the way.
Noted.
I have a question about that rapid response thing that I'm just sort of playing with in my head right now, which is sort of thinking about the scavenger hunt this morning. Like, if teams existed, they were strong, and there was strong communication between them, then I wonder if when something happened and we needed an immediate reaction, there'd be practice in how to relate to each other, versus not having strong teams or not having clarity of teams. Then when there's rapid response needed, it's really stressful because we see what happened during the scavenger hunt today. So it's just a question I'm sitting with about this question of what having strong structure allows us to then do when a need arises very quickly.
So Tammy's question is, how does strong structure set us up to respond rapidly when emergent challenges come up? Yeah, everybody heard that, I think. Yeah, Brittany.
I have this thing about like sticking to roles so much so to it enables you to be flexible in a sense of like something like the scavenger hunt too. Like we didn't know it was going to happen, and these were the resources we had, and allowing that to just exist in that, but then also having a critical lens, but not one that beats us over the head, but also one that is like, these were the resources, these were the, because a lot of times I feel like our chapters are in those positions to have to respond, or in a sense like that, like we don't have the, we do have the, the choice, but like choice can be a double-edged sword in a sense too, that we have to respond, or we have to respond with at the best that we have, the resources we have, and that. I mean, I'm all of us do in a sense too, but like the backlash is real. Like it's a different ball game in that sense. So I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I just love to see hands of people that are thinking that you're interested in integrating some version of a team structure like this in your organization. Okay. That's great to know. Thank you, everybody. So we're going to take a half-hour break. This is a great time to just check in with yourself about whatever your needs are.